would you decide? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to Kent with Bent 90, which of course is Kent Tales. Woohoo!
Woohoo!
And we are here to talk about Kent Hovind, the man, the myth, I guess, the legend? No. But his brain is a myth. Well, actually, it can't be a myth because it's getting damaged recently, so... Yeah. Look, I said last time we were on, I wish I hadn't watched it happen, and you guys probably don't want that in your brains. However, I don't actually feel that bad that it's happening, because quite frankly, I mean, it couldn't happen to a nicer fella, right?
I don't like any of it, and I'm not going to watch the thing. Although I did ask about it, and earlier, Dapper, you told me it's probably a good idea not to watch it. Basically, you convinced me I don't need to see it.
I wish I hadn't seen it, honestly.
Yeah, so I don't need to see that.
For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Kent had some pretty obvious on-camera medical problems, so I don't recommend going to search it out, but I feel like Kent might not last all that much longer. But we will, because Kent might go, but his content is eternal. As long as it's on YouTube. As long as YouTube exists, Kent Hovind's content, his trash, is going to be eternal. And of course, we all know that he's already grooming up little Matty Powell to be his successor. The Dinosaur Adventureland Creation Science Evangelism legacy will live on, which means there will be reasons to oppose it. But anyway, for those of you who might be new, welcome. This is a show where basically I drink. Bent has water mostly, and we talk about basically how bad Kent is doing at whatever it is he's talking about today. Today he's talking about I don't even know. It's just class 8. I don't get a title on this one.
CSE 201.
Class 8.
201.
Yeah.
Man, I should get my notebook out.
So basically, we have some drinking rules because it's sort of a drinking game. Despite the fact that I was reminded that way back in like Kent with Bent 5, I said it would be a really bad idea to turn this into a drinking game. Well, that didn't last. Anyway, so we'll take a drink whenever Kent Hovind says something that's so stupid that we just kind of have to keep our brains from melting. Also take a drink whenever he gets something that's actually accurate. Like if he gets a pointed fact correct, but he has to not be just like, reading it out of a book. It has to be from his own brain. Take a drink for that. Just celebrate. We'll also take a drink whenever Kent Hovind tells a story that didn't happen, whenever he references the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or, prominent members or various activities thereof, especially in the 1930s and 40s. Take a drink for that. Let's take it.
It happens a lot.
It does. It's surprisingly a lot.
A lot.
He'll just, boom, pivot. Suddenly we're in Germany in 1942. It's just
I think it's
why?
More likely than not. I think it's happened in more than half the episodes. Maybe it hasn't, but...
That was our first random-ish drink trigger, which is, of course, that Godzilla stopped by. We'll go into that more after we have our first drink of the evening, which, of course, we have to add to our drink counter. Okay, there we go.
All the way up to 1.
I know, right? Already. So that brings us to some of the things that you guys can cause. So, in addition to the Godzilla sounds triggering a drink, which is one of the options, anyone who's a channel member, if you super chat with any of the kaiju emojis, which include Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, we will take a drink for that. Also, if you are not a channel member, y'all can make us drink by super chatting something to the effect that AIG is a bag of dicks. Now, you have to be a little bit creative. You just type that out in English, YouTube will auto-reject it. Just say, no, can't do it. So, you can't just do that. You have to, work your way around it. But if you do, we'll take a drink for that. The reason for that is that AIG likes to copyright claim, basically everything that anyone ever uses of theirs.
They don't care about fair use unless they're practicing fair use. Then they care about it. But other people know.
But only for their own defense. Because I've had them copyright claim videos that I used their footage from, wherein they used other people's footage via fair use. Which is just amazing.
Why not just have
Awesome.
2 standards?
Right. So let's see. The thing there is it hasn't come up in a while because it's been a while since I covered AIG, but I just recently, because of a request from actually several viewers, started working on a series where I'm responding to a I think year and a half, maybe 2-year-old video by the late David Menton about why birds, according to him, aren't dinosaurs. So I'm fully expecting to get copyright claims on every single one of those videos when I upload them. So yeah, if you guys want to help me with that slight loss of income, that's why AIG is a bag of dicks.
I'm already going to drink for a prediction that's going to come true, because you know that's going to happen.
Oh yeah, well, that's true. Good report. Okay, so and of course, predictions. When one of us makes a prediction wherein what the creationist is about to say isn't super clear, but one of us thinks we have a prediction, we'll take that drink if we get it right. And I think that covers all of them. Have I missed any events?
Well, I was kind of typing for a bit, so I don't know if I'd heard you say when he makes a joke that doesn't land or not.
I didn't say that. Yeah, if Ken Hovind tells a joke and it doesn't land, we take a drink for that.
I thought you did, but I missed it. But yeah, just in case. But okay, so that's all the rules.
Them's the rules. Unlike the streets, where we ain't got no rules, here we do have rules. All right, and Bent, what are you drinking tonight? Some water?
So it's iced tea with Mio flavoring in it. Okay. So this one is strawberry lemonade, and then in the Don't Be Dumbass mug, I also have strawberry lemonade.
Okay, I'm drinking a Belgian white, a Belgian style wheat ale. All right, guys, here we go. This Kent Hovind was just talking about clams that fossilized in the closed position, which, if he goes back into it, we'll go back into it ourselves. But for now, we're just going to let him talk.
He said you can get all we want. Yeah.
They're talking about fossil clams.
We're going to start selling them in the bookstore. You know, it's pretty cheap. This would be a great witnessing tool to show somebody a petrified clam in the closed position.
Yeah, maybe toss those tables over and then just flip them.
So here's the thing with clams in the closed position. Clams do, in fact, have to use muscular action to keep their shell completely closed. But if they're already buried in sediment, which is, I don't know if you guys know this, but where most clams live, then they are going to stay with the shells together. And then when more sediment comes and compacts the sediment below it, which is, a thing that happens in the process of fossilization, that's going to further push those clam shells closed. So literally all that's happening is a clam is dying in its natural environment. And Kent's like, well, why didn't the shells come apart? I don't know, Kent, because they were forced together by sediment. And then they fossilized because they're already basically just rock. Kent. Yeah, basically. It's just Kent not understanding physics or clams.
Explain this, please.
I just did, but okay.
So if you students want to get one, to go see John, just let him pick one out.
He can't hear you.
I don't care. He should be able to.
Yeah.
Besides, the one time he could hear me, it's not like he did a whole lot better.
That's true. He didn't.
Oh.
Give him one, okay? A couple more evidence.
No, it's a train in Dinosaur Adventureland.
Recently, when Ken and I spoke at homeschooling, the ammonite and the clam are both great ways to.
Don't ever give microphones to the audience to ask questions on something you're recording for television.
They're clearly recording through his lapel mic, so what we're hearing is the audience member through his lapel mic, which is just the worst option. Room audio from the camera would be better.
I could just turn off my microphone and just kind of yell through the house, and all of the audio from me could just come through your microphone. If you want.
Sounds terrible. Please don't do that.
Oh, I won't do that.
Okay.
Ammonite and...
The non-binary bead says, also, aren't some of them not clams at all? Yeah, some of them are brachiopods, which actually use muscular open action to hold their shells open, and so they actually naturally close when they die. And Kent Hovind is incapable of telling the difference between brachiopods and clams, which, to be fair, as a layperson, it is difficult to do, and Kent is a layperson. However...
I don't think I'd be able to do it.
No, you probably wouldn't. I could probably teach you to.
Not without... yeah, of course, but...
But the thing is, Kent portrays himself as an expert.
To be an expert?
Yeah.
He did call himself Dr. Dino for decades. And then someone asked him about recognizing a skeleton as a dinosaur and how he would do that. A question he had never considered before.
Right.
So
Dr. Dino never once considered in his life how he might determine if something's a dinosaur.
I still can't believe that happened. That broke the Matrix for me.
You already had your doubts about Ken Hovind, but at that point...
Two worlds were colliding in ways that were amazing.
All right, here we go.
Anyway,
The clams, yeah, they're great witnessing tools. Take them with you. Go on to some more evidences that the Earth is not billions of years old. The Mississippi River flows down. They call it the Muddy Mississippi.
Oh, right. This is the one that has bad audio. So I'll read it for you. The Muddy Mississippi, they have to keep building up the levees higher and higher.
To keep building the higher, the folks in New Orleans.
Folks in New Orleans know about the levees. They live right next door to them. Yeah, that's true.
It's because Satan adjusted the tracking or something in it.
Oh, right. That's at the beginning. Yeah, they were like Satan
they said it
trying
was
to
the
disrupt
devil who did it. As opposed to just a stinking malfunction.
I forgot about that. Yeah, they blame the bad audio on Satan. Oh, goodness. Which raises the question, why isn't Satan always messing with your audio?
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe that's why I had such terrible luck with microphones for so long. Satan.
I can't prove it's not. The hurricane.
That's true. It's not.
The hurricane showed them they weren't, or I think I said they weren't tall enough or strong enough, the levees.
Or it wasn't strong enough, right? Why would they build a city in a hole to begin with?
In a hole when they started.
Isn't it question number one? Why didn't they leave when they had the opportunities? Question number two.
They'd already built a city.
Why do I have to pay to fix it? It's question number three.
Because
you don't pay taxes. What are you talking about?
You don't pay to fix it.
What is?
We're gonna take a drink for that one.
That's a don't be dumbass streak.
Okay, so here's the thing, Kent. In order to pay for federal disaster relief, which is the only way your taxes from Florida would wind up all the way in Louisiana, you would have to be someone who was paying his federal taxes, which we all know you weren't. In fact, you were at this point still bragging about how you hadn't filed federal income taxes in 20 years. And
this
you
was
were
what, a
winning
year
your
or two
fight.
before,
Something like that,
before you went to jail? Like, wow. Isn't it ironic, don't you think?
So, yeah, Kent, you weren't paying for it.
And why are they fixing it?
Because millions of lives were impacted. And
you say, why are they fixing it?
Yeah, and of course, New Orleans is economically important for both tourism and trade reasons because it has a major port and it's a big tourist attraction. So it probably costs less to fix it.
Was he suggesting not to fix?
Yeah, I think if in Kent's ideal world, the hurricane would have come in. Yeah, I think it was Katrina that he's going on about. Hurricane Katrina would have come in. Then it would have been completely flooded, destroyed. People would have abandoned it, and it would now just be a ruin.
Is he one of the? I've heard people say Hurricane Katrina was God's judgment, and if he's going that route, I might have to take a little time out because I'll get too mad. So I'm just gonna squeeze these stress balls and not think about that.
Yeah, and Bede is pointing out correctly that one of the big problems with New Orleans is that it was built primarily because of the strategic and trade implications of being at the mouth of the Mississippi River, which because it's a broadly navigable river, especially with dredging, which was fairly easy. It's very important economically as well as strategically for getting ships into the Gulf of Mexico and then up into inland. So, water shipping is more efficient than land shipping. But the Mississippi has been trying to change course for decades. And the dams and levees are primarily there to, one, yeah, they do help with flooding, but also, two, to keep the Mississippi River currently where it is, emptying into New Orleans. Anecdotal, who's been a member for 5 months at the Amniote level, which, by the way, guys, if you want to join the channel, you get access to the special Discord, where I'm going to be hanging out later, watching some stuff with people. You also get access to, I think, like 10 or something videos that haven't premiered yet, so that's like at least 5 hours worth of content or so.
Yeah.
As well as if you go high enough, you can get your name in the credits, other perks. There's a button down below, but he said, or I think Tiktaalik goes with he. If not, please correct me, Tiktaalik. Says, I don't remember why Viking women didn't let their husbands administrate the home. I didn't know why Viking women didn't let their husbands administrate the home until I learned Kent is of Norwegian descent. Nice. Yeah, I wouldn't let him administer a home either. I hope he's not representative of Norwegians broadly.
Why rebuild it in the same spot? Build it someplace else. You
can't just build a new city somewhere, Kent. That would be more expensive. Kent Hovind is a man who honestly thinks that repairing some flood damage would be less expensive than rebuilding New Orleans somewhere else.
An entire huge. Oh my gosh.
Yes, this I'm taking a
That
drink.
is
That is so
so-
dumb.
He doesn't understand money. Has he
Apparently
ever
not.
worked? He just gets donations. I don't think he's ever worked. I don't think he has any idea what it's like to earn money.
Now, okay, as someone who earns money from people handing him money over the internet, I can't talk too much. But I do think you're right. I don't
You've
think he's...
had jobs before.
Yeah.
You know the difference.
That's true.
That's my point. He's never.
I don't think he has, no.
I don't know. Maybe he got paid when he was teaching high school, whatever.
He wasn't doing that either.
Biology
He was just lying
and
to
math.
kids.
Was he getting paid from
Yeah, I guess
school?
probably. He was-
Like this?
he
Is
was
this? Does
probably
this
being
count?
paid.
What he's doing now? Does he think this counts?
Yeah, he does.
So was he really getting paid for it, or was he just at a church talking to kids? I don't know. I don't
I don't know. Man.
I don't even think about it anymore.
Go to Kansas, man. It's
Pretty
above sea
amazing.
level, and there's plenty of open land out there.
Yeah, we'll just rebuild an important trade center at the mouth of the Mississippi in Kansas. That won't at all be a problem for the trade, Kent. I've taken another drink for you will just move New Orleans to Kansas City. Or Kansas. It's important that it be at the mouth of the Mississippi. That's kind of the point.
But so as the
Maybe
rivers
there
flow,
should be a new New Orleans.
Yeah, maybe.
And then a new New Orleans.
they bring sediments with them, mud, and normally you have a flood season. The river spreads out over the whole neighborhood, and it drops off another inch or two of fresh soil.
No, there isn't annual floods of New Orleans. Okay.
Sediment. It's called the floodplain.
I mean, that's a thing. But, like, he's saying it like it's happening directly in New Orleans every year. Like, no, that's one of the reasons why all the dams are there, and they don't normally breach annually.
They decided they don't like to get their house flooded every year, so they build a dike, and that's going to hold all the water in the channel.
I guess he
Now,
does
as
know
the
that.
water comes down, as soon as the river slows a little bit, it drops the sediments out.
That depends on the sediment. So that's, like, both right and wrong. So, basically, as a rule of thumb, the bigger the sediment is, the harder time it has staying suspended in water. And so the faster the water is usually moving to keep it suspended. So, what's happening is that as water slows down, the biggest sediments tend to drop out first. And then things, so, first little actual, like, bits of rock, like whole rock, will drop out. And then sand, and then, like silt and clay and finer things will then drop out as it gets slower and slower. But by the time it gets to New Orleans, I mean, the Mississippi is already a pretty slow river. So it's already dropped pretty much all the sand and big chunks of rock. So what's left there is like clay and silt.
Faster it's moving, sediments it can hold. It's called suspension. It holds them in suspension. Well, when it slows down, it drops them. That's why when the river turns a corner, you get a sandbar.
That is actually basically correct, because of the phenomenon that he's talking about. Yeah, we'll take a drink for that. That's basically true.
All the sediments drop out of suspension. Who cares? Well, I
don't know, Kent. Apparently you do, because this is going to be important, apparently.
Mississippi River is now got channels.
Mm-hmm.
It can't flood. So all this mud keeps accumulating.
Which fills in the bottom of the river or goes out into the delta.
Or goes out into the delta, called the New Orleans Delta. The river, you can see it coming down from the upper left there, goes all the way to the lower right.
I'm sorry, is Kent saying that before the dams and the dikes that there was no Mississippi Delta? That's not true.
There's a lot he's saying that isn't true.
Yeah, that's. I think that's where he's going with this. Vandelian 1998 for $5 says, and since we know what a floodplain looks like, we know there isn't one covering the world on the same layer. Yeah, that's actually also a pretty good point. We do know what floodplains look like, Kent. How come there isn't a big old one that covers all of the Earth? Weird.
What, do you trust the evidence? Pfft,
I know, right?
scuffer.
On that long peninsula sticking out there. That thing keeps getting longer and longer as new sediments come out. It's actually growing pretty rapidly. 80,000 tons of mud come down the Mississippi every hour.
I have no idea if those numbers are accurate. I don't super care.
If you could pick up a gallon of it, let it set, see how much sediment settles out, and then multiply that by how many gallons go past every hour. 80,000 tons of mud every hour.
Hey, Kent actually suggested a pretty decent experiment. I'm kind of impressed. That is actually a pretty good way to get a basic estimate of how much sediment is being dumped into the Gulf of Mexico by the Mississippi River. Take a sample, see how much is in there, calculate what the flow rate of the river is, and what the volume of your sample is, and then you can just rearrange the numbers with some basic algebra and get an estimate as like to the per unit time sediment flow through the river. That's pretty good actually, Kemp. I appreciate that you are someone who's capable of understanding.
I think you're giving him way more credit than what he actually said, which could be interpreted that way, but I did not, and I don't think he meant it that way.
Well, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt on this one. You don't have to
do that.
You don't have to.
Yeah,
of course, during flood season it's worse. Rainy season, dry season it's less, but it averages out a whole lot of mud. They call it the Muddy Mississippi, for a good reason.
Yep, we already
used to live in Illinois. You guys probably to this cause, right?
Oh, we didn't get
you
subtitles.
Get a good flood.
Satan also disrupted the subtitles that time, guys.
Oops.
Part of your yard washes down into the Ohio, or Wabash in your case, and then it ends up down in New Orleans. Okay. Well, the delta's growing larger. There's nobody arguing about that. The problem is, when they run all the math on this, they drill through this delta all the time looking for oil. Okay, because they find stuff trapped under this mud that turns to oil.
No, it's not. I mean, I guess it is under the mud, but it's like also under then plenty of rock.
They're looking for oil because there's oil.
Right.
It's that simple.
But it's not directly under the mud. It's under the rock that's under the mud, which I guess Kent didn't technically deny, but he made it sound like there's stuff that's getting trapped in the mud right now, turning it directly into oil right now, and then people are pumping that oil directly out of the mud, which is not what's happening.
He said an accurate thing, and then I think he tried to simplify and showed how little he understands what he's talking about.
Yeah.
By saying a dumb thing.
All right.
So they know everywhere out there.
They know how thick the mud is out there.
Real well tested.
Yes. You know what? That's true. We'll take a drink. That is true. They do know it has been well tested because of oil exploration.
He got that from a book.
But he wasn't reading it directly out of the book. Look, I got most of what I know from books. It's not that he couldn't have gotten the information.
He has the page up on his screen.
Well, maybe, but I can't prove.
Well, he showed it on his. He showed the citation on his slide.
Oh, was that?
Because like the 80,000 ton thing, yeah, that was on the slide.
Oh,
but he doesn't understand that. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's summarizing his weird way of understanding and not understanding.
You calculate how much mud there is in this whole delta out here, divided by how fast it's coming, and it comes out about 80,000 or 30,000 years worth of mud.
So, way older than you think the Earth is. Got it.
Probably the New Orleans Delta actually starts someplace up near Memphis, Tennessee.
Why? Is Kent thinking that the entire time the river has existed, it's been building a delta? I'm going to take a drink. I just can't right now.
I don't know anything about rivers.
Kent, it doesn't have to have been building its delta the whole time, whereas the entire course of the Mississippi started underwater or some stupid thing like that. That's not how it works.
It's all the rest of it's filled in with mud, way down there to Gulf, even into the Gulf of Mexico. You see down there, under the words Gulf of Mexico, they see the words Mississippi Cone. That's some of the mud from the Mississippi way out there. It is.
Yeah, that is. That's the mud from the Mississippi dumping out past the continental shelf into the Gulf of Mexico.
That's probably 500 miles out from the mouth, from the end of the river. Okay.
Just eyeball that? Is that how you're doing your science, Kent? Of course, we all know he's not doing any science, but that's how other creationists do their science.
He
just
loves
eyeball
science.
It. Yeah, sure he does.
He's taught it for 15 years.
Well, this mud is coming out at 80,000 tons an hour. The question is, why would it be only 30,000 years old?
Well, let's just assume that you're right about that, Kent. What are some options? Let's see. One is that that's when the Mississippi drainage basin formed and started spilling out into that particular area. That's one option, which could be explained by things like, the Rockies rising significantly over the past 30,000 years. It could also be helping with an explanation with things like, prevailing winds, climate change over the course of that time. There's a whole lot of reasons why rivers aren't permanent features of the Earth that just always exist. Rivers come and go. They change their course. It's also entirely possible that the mud that's being measured right now coming from the Mississippi is only part of it, and that mud from previous courses that were significantly different from the current course of the Mississippi are elsewhere and just aren't currently being measured as part of the flow of the Mississippi. Because, they're not there anymore. Well, they're not there because they were elsewhere. Also, mud just doesn't stick around forever. Sometimes it does things like, gets subducted under plates. Sometimes it lithifies into various things like mudstone or siltstone or whatever. I mean, there's a whole bunch of reasons, none of which are the Earth only can be 6,000 years old because the Mississippi is 30,000 years old.
I feel like it could kind of dilute in a vast ocean also.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, it's going to depend on things like, water currents, temperature, like that, as to whether or not it can come out of suspension fast enough.
I feel like there are Gulf currents that it's heading towards. That would be really weird if it reached them and then something else happened.
But the thing is
weird the right word?
Any of my answers are right. It still is a 30,000-year-old river, which is a bit of a problem for a 6,000-year-old Earth. And even if it were a 6,000-year-old river, Kent would have to prove that the Mississippi, of necessity, started when the Earth did. I don't see any reason to think that's true. And of course,
wouldn't the flood kind of reset all rivers anyway?
Yeah, it probably should be only 4,000 years old. Yeah, reason to believe Kent about how old Mississippi is. So there's that.
Pretty good point too. Yeah.
Because the Mississippi isn't as old as the Earth. That's it. That's the whole thing. I'm just taking a drink. Kent, almost all of your examples just boil down to the same question as, hey, the zit on my ass cheek is only 2 weeks old, therefore I must be 2 weeks old. That's not how anything works.
Or why isn't the whole Gulf of Mexico full of mud by now? Now, this is one of the factors, probably the only factor, that has been used by some people to say, this proves there was an ice age 30,000 years ago.
The Mississippi is the only factor that people have used to say there's an ice age. I mean, all those ice cores from Iceland and Greenland, those aren't things. All the ridiculous amount of, rocks moved, obviously, by things like glaciers that are now sitting all over North America and Europe, those don't count. Nothing there counts. All of the land that's currently submerged under shallow oceans in places like off the coast of Europe or like Melanesia, no, that doesn't count. None of that counts. It's just the Mississippi, guys. If the Mississippi were apparently older, then no one would think there was an ice age. That's it. It's the only reason. Chris Reese, for $5, says, Kent and AIG are satchels of eggplant emojis. We will take a drink for that one. Thank you very much. Okay, let's continue on with the Mississippi being the only reason anyone thinks there's an ice age, apparently.
The people who say there are multiple ice ages say...
So virtually everyone who knows what they're talking about. Yep. Oh! And then Bent Hoven, who's been a member at the tetrapod level for 27 months, which makes him one of the very few people to have that cool Dapper Dino badge. Of course, there's Jens van Broekhoven, who also has it, which is also really cool. It says, AIG are a bag of Kents. Why we drink again.
I went there.
I appreciate
no regrets.
No, none. All right, here we go.
There was one 10,000 years ago and one 30,000 years ago. Wait. Now, how do you know that?
Things like carbon dating of Ice Age remains, looking at successive waves of glaciation, which again, we can see thanks to things like, erosion levels, drop stones from glaciers, things like that. We can check with, the length of time that, say, the winter versus the summer layers were accumulating in ice cores in places like Greenland. Yeah, there's a lot of options. And Chris McDaniel sends a Mothra emoji, but remember, the rule is it has to come in a super chat, which I believe means that like a $1.99 super chat is the minimum for sending the Mothra emoji. Now, the reason for that isn't because I want to like bilk you out of every dime. It's honestly because if I didn't put a price tag on it, people
there
would
could
just
be 44 people typing them constantly.
right. I currently have, I think, 67 members, which actually means I only need like I think it's like 8 more people to join to get the next emoji. So if you're on the fence, now's the time. But anyway, if all of them could just make me drink at the whim of a hat, or at the drop of a hat at a whim, I don't know, I'm mixing metaphors. I would die.
Well, we know about the one 10,000 years ago from the Niagara Falls. And we know about the one 30,000 years ago from the Mississippi Delta.
Again, Niagara Falls doesn't have to correlate to the age of the Earth or to necessarily this one. I'm taking a drink.
I'm not thirsty anymore. Can't stop it.
There might be a...
Oh, Chris McDaniel, don't apologize. Which actually, Chris McDaniel is new. I think this is the first video since he joined. So, if everyone who is a channel member could send him some tetrapods to welcome him to the channel membership, I would greatly appreciate it.
Simpler explanation for this, guys, okay?
Okay.
Maybe there's only 30,000 years worth of mud out there because, 6,000 years ago, God made everything.
Okay. Still got, 24,000 years to account for, but let's see.
4,400 years ago, there was a flood.
Okay.
As the flood water was running off,
it would incise a neat, relatively straight and very smooth channel, unlike the Mississippi's channel, which is meandering and goes zigzagging all around. Okay. Also, the Mississippi flood basin is very, very flat. That's why Mississippi is so slow. It has a very, very shallow angle. Yep. Okay, so we know that this is not the cause of the Mississippi basin.
70% of that mud's going to wash out there in the first 30 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Chris. It's her, actually.
Really?
I'm sorry.
Will it?
I should have noticed that because you have the K instead of the CH. I'm sorry about that. That was not an intentional attempt.
Dapper, you're so mean to your new friends.
I'm sorry. Look, guys, it's not always easy. I try to keep track as best as possible. I will fail.
You're not being mean. You're trying.
Okay. I will sometimes make mistakes.
And it's a thing that comes up, every episode there's new people.
That's true.
So
Which is great,
talking about
by the way. I love that.
The emojis needing to be super chats. It's just more of an explanation. When I watch Twitch streamers, the good ones, they'll explain the same thing over and over because there's new people showing up.
It's true.
That don't know.
That's true.
And it's like, why do you keep... Oh, you're being polite and telling people. Go, no, okay.
Well, thank you, Chris, for not taking it personally. I do appreciate that, because it was not meant as an insult. Although, now that I think about it, implying that you're a man isn't really an insult, because that would imply that I think that being one is a bad thing, which I don't. But it still wasn't an intent to intentionally use the wrong pronouns. Here we go.
So today it's coming pretty slow. It's only 80,000 tons an hour. You should have seen the first few weeks, man. It was dropping a whole lot of mud out there. So it's just as logical, and I think more logical to say, most of this delta formed very rapidly.
No, because... Just take another drink and we'll go over it just one more time, just to hammer it home.
I'm actually taking notes. I have been this whole time.
Well, I appreciate that. Okay, so... when
You could pause and screenshot and see if you can read my handwriting if you want.
Look, earlier today, you showed me your handwriting, and I said, oh, you want to buy, what was it? Poxifos.
Poxifos? It's potatoes, but like my T is like sideways, and the F and T, anyway.
Yeah.
I also misspelled a word in here, because...
So anyway... oh, right, so... it is possible to tell if there is flood runoff in the Mississippi, right? So what would flood runoff look like? So we're now talking about the actual deposit in the Mississippi, not necessarily the river and the basin itself, right? So what would we see in the Gulf of Mexico? Well, first, flood runoff like that, unlike what Kent was talking about with the Mississippi, doesn't tend to drop the heavier sediment early on. The flood, by definition, is rapid the whole way through, so it's going to be carrying not only sand and large grain sediment like that, but actually like chunks of rock. There's going to be boulders in it. But that's not what we find in the Mississippi Delta and the Mississippi Cone. We find relatively fine-grained mud and silt. So that's a problem. We'll also expect that the whole deposit would be more up until the top few percent that Kent's talking about would be heavily graded by grain size. So that the biggest chunks of rocks would be at the bottom, and then you would get smaller bits of sand, then finer sand, then up into the clays and silts and whatnot. We don't see that either. So was the Mississippi Delta and Basin and Cone formed by a flood? Absolutely 100% not. That is not one of the options left to us by the evidence. If there's 30,000 years of fine-grained sediment, sorry, Kent, but yeah, it took 30,000 years to accumulate. Why hasn't the river been there longer? Don't know off the top of my head. But either way, it doesn't help you. Here we go.
The rest has come, fairly slowly, only 80,000 tons an hour. I preached at a church in Louisiana one time, and a guy said, Brother Hovind, I'm a pastor at a church in Baker, Louisiana. Here's his testimony. He wrote me a letter. He said, recently you did a seminar at Comite Baptist, which one of our young married couples attended. They told you a story of an experience I encountered.
Oh, good. Kent Hovind, look, guys, I'm pretty sure this phone number is defunct and doesn't go to Dan Gunter anymore. But,
I'm not convinced.
Your citation is just to dox this guy's personal phone number. That's quite a thing.
It was a different world that he lives in his own head.
Yeah.
While working in an oil field, where we drilled through a tree over 60 feet, almost 14,000 feet below the surface. I can tell you that it was block 487 of the Mississippi River Canyon.
Big Degrade, who's been a member for 4 months at the tetrapod level, says, Godzilla, time to drink, 8 men, 8 women, and dinos. Thank you very much. And then Andrew Judge sends a $4.99 super chat with a T-Rex and a sort of macronarian type-ish sauropod. Thank you very much, Andrew Judge.
That's 2 drinks I gotta do.
Oh, yeah, that's true. No, because Andrew Judge didn't send a Godzilla emoji. Those are just generic dinosaur.
I'm gonna drink anyway because it's a dinosaur, even though it's not required.
You know what? That's fine by me. In fact, I'll even increment the drink counter, but I do have to pour a new beverage. So I think Andrew Judge is a first-time viewer.
Welcome.
Yes, welcome, indeed.
There's several first-time viewers.
Yeah, I love it.
Welcome to all of you.
I love when there are first-time viewers because, 1, selfishly, it means the channel is growing. But 2, I just like meeting new people and seeing new names in the chat and whatnot. So yeah, well, you know what? Take a drink for the dinosaur emoji from the super chat from Andrew Judge. Thank you very much, man. All right, here we go. Where's my play button? There it is, guys. Yeah, I got a confession to make. For the first time ever, I did a little bit of pre-gaming today. I drank about 2 fingers of vodka. So, yeah, I kind of had a feeling that this was going to be a rough one. So, here we go.
Field, and we were drilling for Chevron Oil Company. I was the on-site manager for a well logging and sampling service, Dan Gunter. Imagine that. They drilled through 14,000 feet, which is 2.5 miles.
Okay, yeah. Sure, why not?
And then they hit a tree. Okay. Now, he was the on-site manager. What they do, as they drill, then bring up sections, they save it. And they number it. And they log the whole thing. They want to know what they're drilling through. Because they know they're looking for certain types of rock. All of a sudden, oh, hey, next one we're going to hit oil. Okay?
It's a little more complicated than that. By a little, I mean a whole heck of a lot. So I actually know a geologist who works with oil companies doing oil exploration in Canada. And it has to do with a lot of stuff. There's facies modeling, which means they actually do have to check with things like the calendar, well, not the calendar, the absolute age of rocks. So for this, things like radiometric dating is key. They have to really get a great model of all of the rocks in the area. When they find fossils, they have to send them off to like petroleum paleontologists who know things like, exactly which fossils they should be finding where, and which fossils indicate that there's likely some kind of, oil bearing or natural gas deposit, things like that. Like, it's a whole big thing, and oil companies spend like billions to get these studies done, find out where there's likely to be oil, because it costs additional millions to drill a well. And if the well is dry, if you don't hit oil, well, you just flushed all that money down the drain. And we know that is not sustainable, because there's a company that decided to use things like young Earth creationism and the Bible to direct where they were going to drill for oil and natural gas. It's called Zion Oil and Gas. They went and did things like bought the rights to a huge section of the area around or in Israel, because they thought that the Bible was telling them that, and that because of the flood, they would be able to find all of this oil. Yeah, they had to file for bankruptcy, and they have since switched to using traditional methods, and have in fact managed to find oil since then. Or I think it was natural gas, but whatever. They found petroleum products, or not petroleum products. What is it? Fossil fuels. That's what the word I'm looking for. Silver Harlow, who's been a member for 6 months at the Tetrapod level, says, "Which emoji is it for a drink of water? Please don't die." There isn't an official water emoji. However, I did have a whole lot of water before we started, and I'll probably have a whole lot of water after we end. And then Jens van Broekhoven sends a €5 super chat, which is 5 tetrapod emojis. I really appreciate the tetrapod emoji. Yeah. So here we go.
A certain type of rock. So the oil driller, they've drilled, I don't know how many bazillion holes in the world, looking for this. So they know how to find oil. They drill down and they save, it's called the core sample. As they drill down, they save the stuff coming up, and they set it up on the deck of the ship or whatever on shore, and they log everything.
So now we're specifically offshore, okay. But that is also something that happens on land. I don't think Kent's necessarily saying it doesn't happen on land. I just want to point that out too. Because like my friend who's a petroleum geologist in Canada is not working offshore primarily. He's doing stuff like he'll take, 4 or 5 months, and he'll go off to some remote location in like Saskatchewan, northern Saskatchewan or something. And then he'll be there for, like I said, a few months, getting paid quite well for those few months. And then just, doing all that research. And Jarrett Tilford says, for $1.99, finally viewing live, AIG equals BOD. I think I know what BOD stands for. Take a drink for that. Glad you caught it live.
Welcome, new person for live.
Yeah, I'm really happy. Look, one of the things I love is when someone starts binging Kent with Ben, and then they catch up to live. That's always fun for me.
That's kind of the theme today. Kent Tales Woohoo celebration.
They drilled through, but the tree was standing.
Theme celebration.
Yes.
That's it. That's all it is.
We might be getting special guest Launchpad McQuack later on. No promises. By no promises, I mean really don't hold your breath for that one.
This is the first I've heard of this, so this is going to be either amazing or very disappointing.
I think you might be disappointed.
I expect that too. Yes.
Okay. Here we go.
I'm always disappointed.
Guys, if Launchpad doesn't show up, take it after the stream drink. Here we go.
Up. He said as they were bringing up pieces, they drilled through the top and somewhere, maybe hit the side of it, I don't know. But they drilled through 60 feet of tree, standing up, under 14,000 feet of mud.
Hey, I mean, look, I don't actually believe this story because it's just a story from some guy, which isn't exactly the greatest citation. But even if it's true, okay, a tree washed out to sea was washed out by the Mississippi out under the sea. I don't know what to do about this.
14,000 feet below ground, he said in the citation.
Yeah, below like mud from the Mississippi, though, apparently.
I remain unconvinced.
Yeah, I don't think this happened.
Especially when you actually read the paragraph of the citation. It's a few declarative sentences that don't really mean anything or don't lead to anything or don't have a conclusion, which is pretty typical of how Kent likes to argue.
Yeah.
Unrelated premises, therefore conclusion. Don't worry about it being valid. Don't worry about it being sound. He's already moved on to rule number 7. The National Socialist, that one.
Well, so far we haven't had any talk about national.
Well, that's how he does it.
So, yeah. All right, here we go.
What I'm saying.
How can you explain such a thing?
Let's assume it happened. A tree was washed out to sea by the Mississippi and then covered in sediment after it was waterlogged and sank. Number of things could make that be covered in sediment relatively rapidly, like, say, a mudslide or an earthquake causing a mudslide. So, how about that? Tree washed out, settled more or less vertically, mudslide happened, and it was covered.
Tree's like, catch me outside, how about that?
Michael Apple says roots would be upside down. Maybe, but also it might not have had roots when it got there. That's another problem. And the thing is, trees do have a tendency to sink sort of vertically when they get waterlogged. So, like, even if the story is true, which I very much doubt, it's at best a minor mystery compared to, the when I say mountains, I mean, like, if you printed them out, it would be actual mounds, giant mounds of papers demonstrating that the Earth is very, very old. And Tyler West for $4.99 says, has anybody noticed that all of Kent's science debunking facts are just stories from random guys Kent met once? Yes, we have noticed that many of his citations are just, some guy said it, and here's his phone number, so you can call him. Like, oh, okay, thanks, Kent. It's not a real source, but sure. Like, hey, this guy said this thing, and he can say it to you, too. Great.
Yeah. Christians can't lie, so therefore it must be true, right?
I wish that it were true that Christians can't lie. As we've seen on this channel repeatedly, is apparently not true. Not that I think that Christians are liars, broadly speaking. However...
Now I want to watch a movie called The Invention of Lying, because I like that movie. It's with Ricky Gervais, where he invents lying in a world where everyone has to tell the truth.
Or just never thought of nothing.
It's funny, I think. God.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting premise, right?
Are you going to yell at me? No.
I think I am. Here we go.
It's also probably not as good as Liar Liar, a movie where the messages don't lie. That's a smart movie.
Oh, no, I don't think we had it, Ken. That was just the title that I grabbed for my Andrew Snelling's Liar series.
Well, there was a big flood in the days of Noah, okay?
Notice how the big flood deposits lithified rock everywhere where it's convenient for Kent. But now it's depositing still soft mud where it's convenient for Kent. Because for Kent, any kind of thing that he can't immediately figure out how it would be explained by science, which is virtually everything, it's just, oh, it must have been the flood. So it's just a heads I win, tails you lose. Rapid deposition with lithification, that's the flood. Deposition for some unknown period, big sharp-walled canyon like the Grand Canyon, that's the flood. Big flat bottom drainage basin like the Mississippi Basin, that's the flood. Literally everything in the world that has anything to do with geology, Kent just says, rubber stamps it, that's the flood. Taking a drink, because Kent's flood ideas are completely
Kent doesn't understand floods. This whole thing, all these notes, Kent doesn't understand mud, Kent doesn't understand time, Kent doesn't understand space. Kent doesn't understand science or scientific evidence. Kent doesn't understand logic, and Kent doesn't understand floods.
Yep, all true.
I don't see any way they can get around this.
Okay, you know what? I believe you, Kent, but we've already talked about it. So
when I was up in Anchorage, Alaska,
I really thought he was going to say up in a plane next to a professor. I thought.
He was in Anchorage, Alaska. He visited the Portage Glacier, which I have no idea if that's... I assume that's a real thing.
Portage Glacier. And I'm up there on the ship, looking at the glacier, watching the pieces fall off, and everybody's clapping and cheering. And I got talking to the guy next to me. I said, what do you do for a living? He said, oh, I work up in the North Slope of Alaska, up near Barrow.
Professing to college students?
Okay, well, so far, this is still a realistic It's the thing, right? Because
That's true.
no
This
one
could
wants
be
to
a
be in
restory.
Barrow year-round. Because in case you guys don't know, Barrow is the northernmost human settlement in North America, and it is brutal. Polar bears actively hunt humans in Barrow, Alaska.
Holy.
Yeah. So I know someone who's been there. It's not a fun time.
I imagine they blend in well too with the ice.
They really do. Also, it's the setting of the movie 30 Days of Night. If you ever
Why are
seen that?
those eyes moving towards me? What is that foggy breath I'm seeing?
Yeah.
I'm dead. I got killed by a polar bear.
From what I've heard from someone I know who's been there, it's illegal to go out alone or unarmed. By armed, I mean guns. I don't mean like you brought like a knife. And the guns are for the polar bears. You shoot the polar bears. Because polar bears might look cute on the Nature Channel, but they are actual bears who will eat you. So, here we go.
I said, oh yeah, what do you do? He said, well, we drill for oil up there.
That's literally okay. So, in case you guys don't know, Barrow Oil is basically a company town. The only source of income in the long run from Barrow is oil, and everything else there, whether it be places to buy food, places to just have fun, all of it is in support of the oil drilling. It's an oil town.
He could have had one of those support jobs, though. I guess.
Yes, I'm just saying, like, this is the economy of Barrow. It is an oil
it's
town.
What they do.
The only
Once
reason for most
oil
people
is
to go
done, they're done. Something similar happened in Beaufort, Wyoming. Mining town, I think. I don't remember what it was, but once they were done, they left, and now it was population 1. Last time I went there, like 10 years ago.
Oh yeah, wasn't he also the postmaster general? The one guy
He was
who
the
lived there?
gas station owner, the mayor, and like the postmaster or something like that. I don't know how.
Well, when you get to vote
He
for
was
yourself,
whatever they needed. He was all of it.
Yeah. Okay.
Very nice man. Very good gas salesman for gasoline.
Okay, so Robert Madewell asks what petok means, which is one of the emojis that I have that is in front of a Klingon trefoil. So, petok is a broad insult in Klingon that indicates that the person you're talking to is basically adjusting someone's character as opposed to, say, like their intelligence or something like that. So it is an appropriate appellation for Kent, in my opinion. Although, also, insulting is.
I did use it earlier when I gave a bunch of tetrapods. I threw in a petok at the end, forgetting that that's what it meant. I remembered it was Klingon, and I like Klingon, so I was like, oh, I'll just click that one. But I forgot that it was like an insult. I apologize.
All right, here we go.
I said, well, do you ever see anything unusual when you drill? He said, you know, we find the strangest things when we drill. He said a couple years ago, I think he said a couple years ago, we were drilling. We drilled through 1,000 feet of permafrost, permanently frozen ground, never thaws out. And
well, it doesn't thaw out during the summer. I mean, eventually it'll all thaw, because even if humans stop global warming in its tracks, there will eventually be climate cycles. But yeah, basically, when we say permanent in this kind of context, we mean it doesn't thaw during the summer.
It'll take a while, a long time, many years.
Chesh is here, and she also says that I had a great thumbnail. Thank you. I can't say it was the hardest to make thumbnail I've ever made, but it was also a lot of fun to replace Scrooge McDuck's face with a Kent Hovind face, and then paint out all the Scrooge McDuck like beard ruff and whatnot. And I had fun doing it.
We started hitting wood, and we started saving the pieces like well drillers do, to see what we're drilling through.
So, by the way, permafrost is also where you find things like, frozen mammoths, frozen woolly rhinos, even sometimes frozen humans. So, because it's permanently cold, permanently frozen, things tend to mummify rather than, permineralize. So, it's actually not that unusual to drill through wood in permafrost. But, okay.
Drilling through. He said, we drilled straight down the top of a tree, 300 feet tall.
This is a story that didn't happen. Unless you've got an actual citation to a paper, Kent. This is just a story that happened.
He doesn't.
Okay, we're going to get a little bit more Kent in, then we're going to take a quick intermission, and we will be back.
Under 1,000 feet of permafrost.
That part doesn't matter, Kent.
Well, first place, there aren't many trees on this planet that are 300 feet tall.
That is exactly why I don't believe this story happened. And your story of nameless guy in Anchorage is not convincing.
Okay, these trees around here in Pensacola, about 60 feet. Not many trees over 60 feet here in Pensacola. The world is in...
Yeah, DM Wing says, does he have the guy's phone number, though? Yeah, that's the only way we can verify. What's his phone number, Kent?
There are 6 trees that are taller than 300 feet in the world.
I know Hyperion is one.
Hyperion is 380. But these are individual trees that have been measured to be this tall. Only 6 in the whole world. What's up?
Are they all redwoods?
No. Wait, maybe.
I'm gonna play a little bit of Kent.
Eucalyptus? Flowering plant?
Over
Monara flowering plant?
That's impressive.
Hey, I'm just reading.
Was that from Wikipedia?
Yeah. It's Wikipedia, so
Wikipedia. Well, at least it's not national pornographic, like Kent says.
You know what? It's lines on paper. That's why.
That's a good point. You know what else is technically lines on paper? The Bible.
Kent's dissertation? Oh, the Bible.
Yeah, that too. So
KJV get title.
Oh, if you guys haven't seen us reading Kent Hovind's dissertation on my channel, I think it's a 6-video playlist. Go check it out. We've read all of it. We're some of the only people in the world.
It will make you want to stab yourself in the brain.
Yeah, it might.
So
it might make you want to go all pie on yourself from the pie. Good movie. Anyway, here we go.
A redwood forest, one of the redwood trees in California. It is, I think it's 340 feet now, something like that. It's called the General Sherman Tree. It is the world's record holder.
Is it on there?
I don't see that name.
Maybe that's an old name for Hyperion. Who knows?
340 feet, I believe, is something close to that is the world's record.
Where did you say?
And
those redwoods.
I said it was a California redwood.
Oh, that could be. No.
It could also be one that.
I mean, Hyperion is taller, but it could also. Yeah. I don't know where he's getting his information. It's not this Wikipedia page. I know that.
All right.
Robert, are huge. Okay.
Smitty says, who names trees? Look, man, if a tree is 380 feet tall, it deserves a name. I'm just going to put that out there.
380.3 feet.
Oh, 0.3. Who does decimal feet besides surveyors? Me? Or just use meters.
Well, it's 115.92 meters, but then it's feet next to it. So, yeah. But Kent's using feet, so that's why I'm using feet, because Kent's a stinking American, just like me. Son of a gun.
All right, here we go.
You don't have them around your place, do you? Do you have them? Are they south of San Francisco? Just north. Muir Woods is
2 hours from San Jose.
From San Jose? Yeah. I know we used to go to Muir Woods all the time, and all up and down the coast, clear up to Oregon, to petrify redwood trees. You've been up there, brother, and got probably 30 of them you can drive through.
Fun fact: redwood trees actually used to be much more widespread, existing all throughout places like Ohio and Montana and Wyoming, which you can see when you look at, say, the Cretaceous Lance Formation extending into the Hell Creek Formation up in Montana. So the current redwood forests on Earth are just kind of a tiny fraction of what once existed. However, it is in fact time for our intermission, so please do stick with us. Do remember to hit like. We will be back in just a few minutes after this intermission, and then we will have a quick little ad break from me where I'm, remind everyone like, hey guys, if you want to support the channel, here's some ways. And then we will be right back into Kent with Bent. So please bear with us. We will be right back. are back. Welcome back, B, and thank you for sticking with me. Virtually everyone, I'm impressed. Usually we lose a fair few during the intermission.
It's
Although
nice music.
it is. It's that's the Bose music that you helped record. That you wrote.
Helped record. I wrote every note of that.
But I'm talking about the physical recording.
Which one is that? Is that from Copper Magma or
Yeah,
my own version?
that's the Copper Magma version.
Yes, I helped record that. Sam did the bass and the vocals. Really good bass. I like his vocals in that song. And then Dion
Except for the
did
part
the
there, I
drums.
did the vocals and Kent did the vocals. That part.
Right,
was...
yeah. That part was you and Kent.
Anyway.
And means the song. But Dion, great drummer.
Oh.
Those guys did really good work.
There's
I'm gonna
Godzilla.
shout them out. I'm gonna do it.
Drink for Godzilla. Alright, so I grabbed a new beer. And real quick, guys, I just want to say that, guys, this channel is almost entirely supported by the direct donations and support from my viewers. Very little of the money that this channel makes is from ads and stuff that just kind of happens passively like that. So, if you guys do like this and you are able to afford to support and you want to, there are a lot of options. One is the channel memberships, which you've already seen a whole lot of people who are channel members using the special emojis and whatnot. That has a join button right below this video. It starts at $1.99 a month. Goes up from there with increasing perks as you go up. If instead you'd like to give on Patreon, it starts at $1 a month, or you can go annual. Annual gives you a 12% discount. That goes all the way up to like $100 a month if you want to go crazy, which feel free not to. That also gives you similar perks. It doesn't give you access to the emojis, but it does. Both the memberships and the patrons get access to the special supporter Discord server where I'm in. I was in there for a whole lot of time today talking about like random stuff like gaming. I was talking with one of my patrons and a few of the other, like, one of my patrons was asking me about like Soulsborne games, and some of the other patrons were chiming in about that. We have discussions about taxonomy and like the general chat. It's a great place. And if a monthly or annual thing isn't your thing, there's a store for merch linked in the description. And also, if you just want to be nice to either me or Bent, we do both have Amazon wish lists. And if none of that seems right for you, either you can't afford it or you just don't want to, please hit like, share these videos, and subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. And if you are subscribed, make sure you turn on notifications so that way YouTube will usually notify you when I have stuff. The non-binary bead says Sedartiodactyla. Bead, you are out. That's it. You're done forever. You can never come back. I don't care if Forrest Valkai made a video in which he pretended that Sedartiodactyla is a real thing. I reject his conclusions because I think I know more about mammal taxonomy than he does, in fact. Because he said something that was obviously untrue in that, which is that whales shared a common ancestor with artiodactyls. No, whales nest inside Artiodactyla, which is why I said Artiodactyla. Anyway, here we go.
We didn't take my van through there because you have to take the mirrors off. You know, it's a real tight fit with the van. So we said, forget it. We'll just take a picture, you know. Trust me, a car will go through there, okay? But these trees are huge. Albert, you've never been out there, have you?
Oh, he's talking about the tree that was hollowed out to make a tunnel through it. Yeah, that tree died and fell over. Because as it turns out, coring out a tree is really bad for it.
What?
Yeah, I know.
That's crazy.
That
Who
killed
would have
that
thought?
tree. I know.
I never would have guessed that.
I mean, it was great and picturesque, but like, yeah, no, that's dumb. Anyway.
You got to get to California. Haven't seen snow, haven't been to California. We got to send 3 states, Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. We'll get you to travel some.
A really good thing.
Yeah, I don't much like snow.
Although if you've never seen it, can you really truly hate it?
Good point. Well, I don't know. There's things that I hate that I've never really.
I don't always hate snow. I like snowballs, so you can throw snowballs at people.
Yeah, snowballs are cool.
In a snowball fight. That's always fun.
Look, I think of snow as something I want to sometimes visit, and I already have had. Oh, drink for Mothra.
I want to look up at that mountain over there, wherever it is. Be like, oh look, there's snow on the top of that.
Yeah.
As I sit at my pool, being enjoying summer.
All right, here we go.
Being warm.
Albert, just hang in there, okay? But the point is, a 300-foot tree is absolutely monstrous. To get one under 1,000 feet of
That was the
permafrost,
point?
how could you explain such a thing? I think there was a flood.
That doesn't explain it at all, Kent.
Doesn't understand gravity.
It's once again just anything Kent can't explain. Well, I guess it was a flood, because the floods could explain anything. No, Kent. No, they can't. They can only explain a very small, narrow section of all the things that could possibly exist. Why we're taking a drink. By the way, when I take a drink, I'm taking like a gulp of beer. We're not doing like shots or anything. So please don't you guys do that. Drink responsibly.
Yeah, they're like sips or whatever.
Yeah. I take in like a couple tablespoons. Or like, is that like a few hundred cubic centimeters?
I don't think we have any finish your drink triggers.
No, we
either.
definitely don't.
That would be a really bad idea.
Horrible.
For the safety of humans.
A really, really big flood, okay? Like worldwide flood. This is a picture of the...
Okay, even if it were best explained by a flood, it doesn't have to have been a worldwide flood. It could still be a local flood. Taking another drink. All floods in the ancient past were worldwide. All floods in the current time are not. And they're distinguishable in no way at all.
It doesn't understand the size or shape of the Earth.
Well, I've seen him try to defend the globe against flat earthers. It's really
I'm not sure he knows what a globe is. Like, I think he's seen them in his desk, so like maybe he does. Maybe he does. Maybe he knows that. Maybe I can give him credit for that, but...
I own 2 globes, but neither of them are of Earth. They're both of Mars.
That's true. I have seen them.
I like those globes.
The oldest tree in the
very
world.
different from one another.
That's true.
Is it one like a height map or something?
Take a drink
like the
from
color
Bob.
scheme of it?
I'll answer that in a second. We gotta take a drink from Bob.
It's not that important.
So yeah, one of them is a height map, which is just basically it's measuring from surface mean elevation, which is what you do if you don't have a sea level. Because Mars doesn't have any ocean, so you can't do sea level. So you do surface mean elevation. The other one is a true color, like visible light spectrum map. That's just composite of satellite images in the visible spectrum. Yeah, that's the difference. All right, here we go.
Actually, whether it's the oldest tree or not, nobody knows, because the oldest one is purposely not identified. There's a whole grove of trees up in the mountains called the White Mountains, right near the Nevada border, California-Nevada border. Have you been up there to the...
I think there's another White Mountains? Because I've been to a different set of White Mountains. That's interesting. But that doesn't actually surprise me that much either.
These kind of trees?
I haven't seen it, but I've seen the Bristlecone pine.
So DM Wing asks if the Kent versus Flurford debate is on YouTube. The answer is kind of. So Kent's defense of Flat Earth is on his official channel. However, it wasn't actually a debate. It was just Kent fumbling with a globe, talking about why a globe is the right answer, mostly by just saying if you think it's flat, you're an idiot. That was his best argument. Which, I mean, okay, true. It is kind of a dumb thing to say, since it's, like, if you actually wanted to investigate it, it's not that hard to do. But, that's not a good argument.
It seems like part of the responsibility of the debater to do the work to do that then, even if it's easy work to do,
right.
In my opinion.
Kent,
although I do know of debaters who don't do that.
Kent could do the work to demonstrate the more or less spherical shape of the Earth. He doesn't. Instead, he just insults flat earthers, which, like I said, I mean, his insults aren't inaccurate. They're just not good arguments. And also, it was a while ago, and I'm not going to hunt through Kent's channel to find it, so if you want to hunt for it yourselves, feel free. But I basically never go to Kent's channel because his new stuff is absolute garbage. It's so boring. I've tried to watch it.
Does he even wear ties? I mean, he just wears Hawaiian shirts, right?
Yeah,
I haven't checked his channel in so long.
Yeah. I mean, I checked the comments to my debate with him a few times, way back when it happened in like 2019. That's basically it. I haven't really actively looked at Kent's channel in probably that long. So here we go.
Yeah, well, these are the bristlecone pine. Okay. Now there's also the Joshua trees up there. The Joshua Tree Memorial. You know, those are pretty old.
I mean, not that old. So Joshua trees, for those of you who don't know, are what is it? They're not in the agave family. Now I can't remember it, so you're gonna have to give me a second because now it's gonna bug me because I do know this normally, but you know, there's been a lot of beer.
Chat, help him out.
Right?
Someone in chat knows. Someone has to know. Not gonna be me.
No, probably maybe. Yucca. They're in the Yucca or Jucca family. They're actually in the Jucca genus, and they're really, really common around like western Arizona, eastern New Mexico, that area. So like if you're driving between like Phoenix and Las Vegas, you're gonna go through the Joshua Tree Forest, and they're not particularly old. There's also a whole bunch of them in California, like in Southern California, in the deserty areas. But like, yeah, I don't know why he's talking about Joshua Tree. They're not super old or anything. I don't know. I think maybe he's just mixing up Joshua trees with something else. Also, I do not know how they got that name. So,
with random guessing.
Well, yeah, could.
But these
I feel like Peter Griffin from Family Guy is very loosely based off of Kent Hovind. I read it in a book once. Are you sure it was a book? You sure it wasn't nothing? Oh yeah.
Liz D actually asks a really good question. Is the Earth younger than me? Well, according to Kent Hovind's logic, if you can find any feature of the Earth that's younger than you are, then the answer must be yes. Because Earth can only be as old as its youngest feature. So all you have to do is pour a bucket of biggish bucket of water down onto the ground such that it forms a little runoff stream. You've now formed a mini canyon that is only a few minutes old, which means that's how old the Earth is, according to Ken's logic. So yeah, y'all go outside and sometime
take that entropy.
Just drop the age of the Earth by orders of magnitude.
They're fascinating. It is a gnarled mess. It's a tangled up mess, these bristlecones are. They drill in a real tiny hole, about the size, the pencils where you can adjust the lead, those real thin lead strips in there, the number 0.5 millimeter pencils. They've got a drill bit that drills a hole that small.
Yeah, that's what he means. He means as thin as the lead of the mechanical pencil, not of the whole pencil.
Of a 0.5 millimeter.
So he could just say 0.5
graphite.
Millimeters. But he could just say
it's 0.5 millimeter graphite lead or whatever you call it is a thing that a lot of people in his audience are going to be able to relate to pretty easily.
What? That's fair. Yeah, that actually...
Because I can relate to that really easily.
You know what? That's fair.
He just said it kind of awkwardly. That's all. I was
that's
just kind of...
You know what? Yeah. I get why you would want to do that, because it is within people's realm of experience. You know what, Kent? I retract that criticism. There you go. Look, you can't say that I'm not fair. I frequently give Kent the benefit of the doubt and retract things like that.
Not fair at all.
I think I'm fair. Anyway, here we go.
No, you're fair. You just yell.
But it's a pipe. It's a pipe.
I do not yell at my.
No, you didn't.
Pipe that's that small, 0.5 millimeter outside diameter, I believe. As they drill in, it's caking out. The center part is hollow, and so they drill in a ways and then pull it back, and it snaps off a little core sample, real tiny. Okay.
Mm-hmm. How biopsies are taken oftentimes. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. I mean, basically, this is a tree biopsy.
Yep.
More and pull it.
Exactly.
They drill into these trees. They don't want to hurt the tree too bad, okay? And then when they're done, you plug the hole with wax or something. I don't know. But so the tree, it grows really funny.
Okay, fine. We'll drink for it. It's not a real drink trigger, but we'll not.
Well, he told the truth about something. He got something right.
There you go.
It's a tangled up mess, and it's very difficult to count the rings. But the oldest tree, by the way, we got a piece.
Right.
Not for people who are trained.
It's a bristlecone right in the next room here, okay? This is it right here. I counted the rings. I had to use a magnifying glass to count the rings.
Not those calipers? Okay.
It's something you guys might want to do for Dinosaur Adventureland when kids come here.
He doesn't know what that is and why it's in that picture on that book and the citation. Just use a magnifying glass and just keep starting over when you lose count. And accidentally go from 50 to 70 because
why not?
You forgot where you were at.
It's a bristlecone and say, who can guess how old it is? And give them a magnifying. I had to use a magnifying glass and a needle.
Oh,
and I was counting the rings, 1, 2, 3. And I put an ink pen and I marked every 10 rings. So if you look in there, every one of the marks is 10 years. Pencil too? Well, 10 rings, okay?
He had more tools than just a magnifying glass.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. Look, a magnifying glass and a needle with an ink pen to mark every 10 is not the worst method.
It's a lot easier than just a magnifying glass and trying to follow along with your fingers.
Right. So, you know
what? Especially if you have a stick.
I'm going to say that that's actually a reasonable way to go about it. I personally think that method is pretty okay. Now, am I a dendrochronologist who is an expert on any of this? No. No. If you need dendrochronology advice, please seek out a licensed dendrochronologist in your area. However, my personal assessment is that doesn't seem terrible.
Bristlecones grow really slow. If you look out on the long bench we've got out there, we've got all the log samples, on the bench. The very last one, closest to the tower, is a piece of bristlecone. It has 400 rings, and it's only that big around. 400 years old, about. Very tough to count. But anyway, the oldest tree, they've been able to count the rings, and tree ring dating is not an exact science, okay?
Okay. So we're going to take a quick drink.
Why?
So dendrochronology can, generally speaking, get within a couple years of the actual date of things that it can measure. Now, can it measure everything? No. No, it can't. We don't have
not an exact science. What a dumb thing to say.
So we don't have exact dendrochronology timelines for all parts of the world. We also have a few floating dendrochronology timelines where we know that there's this timeline of this length that exists. We know roughly how far back in the past it is, but exactly where it is, we're not sure because we can't connect it to other dendrochronology timelines. We can only connect it through things like carbon dating, so that's what's called a floating dendrochronology timeline. But the thing is, dendrochronology is its own rigorous field of science. People are trained. They can tell when trees skip rings. They can tell when trees grow a double ring because they're not morphologically identical annual ring. They can tell these things, and they frequently can get to, when they are doing a timeline within historical times, within the actual year, right? So if our historical records are like, oh, such and such happened, and such building was built in 1223, and then the dendrochronologists look at the timber use, they can be like, yep, that was in fact 1223 according to our methods.
Sounds like an exact science to me.
Yeah. Dendrochronology is one of the more exact ways to date things. It is extremely precise and very accurate in almost all cases. Now, is there uncertainty? Is there an error margin? Yeah, that's how all measurements go. No, there's always going to be some uncertainty. You're never going to get the exact measurement.
Thanks, Heisenberg.
Yep. So, poo-pooing on dendrochronology really irks me because it is in fact
the opinion of someone who's so bad at science that it probably shouldn't bother you that much.
I know, but the thing, so it's not that he believes it, it's that he has influence over it.
That's true.
That's what really... But
a lot of people believe that because Kent Hovind said that.
If Kent Hovind...
He sure sounds convincing.
If Kent Hovind were just some dummy who's like, old man yells at clouds, whatever, man. That's one of the reasons why I don't cover, like, some street preacher out there with, like, the end is nigh sign. Because I don't care, because no one believes that guy. Right? It's also why I didn't cover, like, Lord Stephen Christ when he was alive. He has, like, no following. Kent does. So, anyway, here we go.
Sometimes they grow 2 rings a year, sometimes...
Which, again, is distinguishable.
Sometimes, it can vary some. Again,
it's distinguishable.
But the textbooks will say, oh, yeah, we know the Earth is, more than the Bible says because,
I'm going to take a drink. The
textbooks don't talk about the Bible, man. They don't say that at all.
Because they don't
list
care.
A number in years because that's what the evidence suggests.
Yep. Science texts do not care what your interpretation of the Bible is. It doesn't come up. Now, it might come up in your, like, Christian private school where they have the explicitly young Earth creationist textbooks. That might mention the Bible.
Doesn't understand textbooks. I should post these notes on Twitter when I'm done.
Do it.
With my horrible handwriting. Pff, I don't care.
By
Wait,
the
how
way-
many O's are in textbook? Oh, well, let's put a K over that.
By the way, guys, if you're a channel member or a patron, I will be hanging out in the voice chat later. I think I'm going to watch some stuff on YouTube, stream it to that Discord. So, if you currently are a channel member or a Discord member and you don't have access to that, the first step is link your YouTube and Patreon accounts to your Discord account. Those, if you do either of those, it should automatically add you. Here.
We've got tree rings dating going back 8,000 years.
It's a lot longer than that in some cases.
And you're going to hear this argument if you get into evolution or creation debates with somebody. They're going to say, oh, we've got overlapping tree rings. Like here's an example of overlapping tree rings. And they'll say by taking sample from a live tree and sample from a dead tree and sample from a log cabin or sample from an Indian adobe, you know, something that we know is 400 years.
Adobe is dried mud, basically. You're going to have to take a sample from the timber frames of an adobe structure. You can't take a sample from adobe.
Years old. We can overlap the rings and find matching patterns. And you can see where, you know, it's got close rings and the other, you know, and far distant rings, and, you know, and they overlap the rings based on the ring pattern. And they say using this overlapping tree ring method, we can go back 8,000 years is probably the number you're going to hear.
That would be a shortish one.
From you, that's the number I'll hear.
Yeah.
Kent.
Well, I just don't buy that for a second.
Well, good, because no one's selling it.
I'm shocked.
Right.
I really thought that was going to convince you, but no.
You can have two trees growing side by side, and they have different growth patterns. If the one tree is taller than the other one, the big tree gets the sunlight, the little one doesn't get the sunlight. This one has the big one has a different growth pattern than the little one. They're growing side by side.
We're going to take a quick break. Okay, Ken. The question isn't how can you explain discrepancies in tree rings. The question is how can you explain tight correlations between trees that aren't obviously related with their growth patterns. And it's not just as simple as like, oh, we counted the rings. There's a whole lot of statistical analysis that goes into this with like big versus small rings, which trees to use, which trees not to, whether or not disease might have affected something. Like, there's a whole big thing here. And the fact that you, someone who knows essentially nothing about this field, were just like, oh, but what if one tree is in the shade of another one? I bet none of the dendrochronologists who spent decades working on this science, none of them ever thought of that. Pro tip for everyone out there, especially the creationists. If you just show up in a group of experts and you think you thought of the one thing that no one has ever thought of, and that they're all wrong, chances are that they have thought of it, and that you're just an arrogant dick.
And you never took like a freshman course of college in that field.
Yeah.
Because that's when those types of questions get answered, if you went to a YEC high school like I did. If not, they could have been answered in high school. I wouldn't know. I went to a YEC high school that taught that the Earth is 6,000 years old.
That's rough.
Yes.
All right, here we go.
The big one dies. Now the little one gets all the sunlight. Its growth pattern is going to change. You can have two trees growing on opposite sides of the same hill, and they'll grow differently because of the minerals in the ground, the sunlight. Trees on the south side in the northern hemisphere are going to get the sunlight. Trees on the north side of a mountain are not going to get the sunlight. That's why the snow melts last on the north side of the mountain. Okay, it doesn't get the sunlight. You can have trees on opposite sides of the same hill growing differently because of the water. When clouds are moving up a hill, they start to cool off and they drop their moisture. When it comes back down the other side, it is expanding and absorbing moisture. It's called the rain shadow.
Okay, so let's say that Kent is right about all of this. What should we see? If tiny variations in location, orientation, and just level of shade can cause vast differences in growth rings, such that growth rings from neighboring trees are more or less uncorrelated. We should be unable to find correlations between trees. We can find correlations between trees. Therefore, Kent is wrong. That's what you call a syllogism.
That's why if you look at the state of Washington, the wind blows off the Pacific, hits the mountains, and goes up. Well, it drops all the rain on the Pacific side.
That's true. You know what? I've lived there, and that is extremely true. We'll take a drink for that. I remember when I first got to Washington, the very start of a record-breaking number of consecutive days of rain. And I was just like, oh, I guess this is my life now.
That happened when I got to Washington, and that wasn't the same time you got there.
Yeah.
And we were in like the 29th consecutive day of rain, which was like breaking a record. I don't remember what the details were, but
I'm not a big fan of Western Washington, is basically what I'm saying. I know that I have
rain every
audience
day
members
is-
from there. Sorry.
rain every day gets depressing.
The non-binary beat says I currently live. Yeah, it's my condolences. Even though technically you're banned and you're not supposed to be typing in chat and said already a dactyla.
Did I mention that I unbanned Bede
Oh, did
in
you?
my head canon
Oh,
while you
okay.
were banning him? Because I was like, that's kind of...
To be fair, I never
I'll unban.
actually did anything to enforce a ban, like, you know, hiding him on the channel or doing anything like even I didn't even mute them. Just literally just
Right.
said
You just
you're banned.
made a comment as a joke.
No enforcement. All right.
So you're not me to your chat.
And there's a huge forest in western Washington.
The bead now is reminding me of cheetahs and said already a dactyla. Okay, look. You gotta be careful. At some point, you're gonna cross that line, and I'm gonna have
This
to
ban
actually
might
ban
become
you.
real.
Yeah, careful there.
I don't know if I can unban in my head canon. Not if you're just going to keep doing it.
You get up over the mountains, and it's a desert.
That's true too. Spokane is basically a desert. Here we go.
Because the wind, as it blew over the mountains, it lost all its rain. So the tree ring dating is really a far cry from an exact science.
You still haven't explained the correlation. All you've done is say there shouldn't be correlation. That doesn't help.
There are all kinds of things can happen. I had a guy at the seminar one time years ago. He said, Brother Hovind, I'm a professional wood carver. I carve walking sticks.
Okay.
For, rich people. They want to pay $500 and I carve a...
So once again, our source is some guy I met at church. No study, nothing we can verify. Just some guy I met at church carves walking sticks.
Nothing to even ask about provenance. Like,
just a guy who carves walking sticks. Okay.
I mean, he wasn't even a professor on a plane. We don't even know anything. We don't have his phone number on the screen.
Special stick with their name on it, or the picture of their wife or something, whatever they want. He says.
Beat says it hasn't rained for a couple months.
That
Fight
sucks.
me. Tell you what, Beat. I
That
will
actually
fight
sucks.
you. Beat, I will fight you when you can go a year without mildew growing on those sidewalks.
I hate daily rain for over a month.
Yeah.
But no rain for months on end. I mean that happens here, I guess, but I live in a desert. But like up there, I don't remember that. I mean, I do remember summers were very warm and pretty dry, but I thought it still rained periodically.
He said, I've been carving these for, I think he said 50 years. The guy had to be probably 70 years old.
So a very old man once told you at a church. He's almost certainly dead now. We have no source for any of this. Got it.
He said, I raise my own trees. I plant them myself. I stick the seed in the ground. 7 years later.
Okay, hold on. Mackenzie Brown says, Tunicatis pelagos delenda est. This Mackenzie Brown knows what I like. Thank you very much.
I cut the tree down. He said, I've got all these I've raised myself. Hundreds of them for walking sticks. I think he said Japanese yew, if I recall. I don't remember what species of tree it was, but he said,
We'll ask Ollivander at the Wuhan shop. Who cares?
I raise them myself. I know exactly how old that tree is. He said, when I cut them down after 7 years, they always have at least 11 rings.
Cool. Some trees are known for being prone to producing multiple rings per year. One, they tend not to be the subject of dendrochronology, and two, like I said, double ring years are distinguishable morphologically in most cases.
I can't answer why, okay? But the rings
That's
apparently
true. You can't. You have no idea. And that's part of the problem,
I'll take a drink.
Kent,
That
is that you have no idea. You don't even know what morphology would mean in this context, Kent.
Possibly not.
You haven't been to
Season.
cytotech school. Morphology is stinking hard
Mhm.
under a microscope. That is hard. Artistic interpretation of objective criteria, not an easy thing to learn.
Not at all.
are good times and bad times, not necessarily summer and winter. You get a rainy.
No, the rings aren't necessarily summer or winter. They're growth season and non-growth season. It doesn't have to correspond to summer or winter.
Spring, grows great. Dry summer, has a hard ring. Good fall, another spring ring. So I wouldn't get too excited about tree ring dating as an exact science, but it's an estimate, okay? This text.
An estimate which consistently gives ages for things that are far in excess of how old you think the Earth is. And also, I want to point out, trees are significantly more likely to skip a year than they are to have a double ring year. Which means that even if we accept maximum uncertainty for tree ring dating, then the likely actual age is older than the estimate, not younger. Even if Kent is right, that these ages are super unreliable because of double years and years where a tree skips, that still means that we have to go with an older estimate. Because again, trees are much more likely to simply not grow a ring one year, because it's a rough year, than they are to bother growing 2 rings in a single year because it's just a great year.
I also don't want to dismiss the possibility that a crazy old man who is a fan of Kent Hovind might not really know how long ago he planted his own trees, if he's planting hundreds of them. He could just be miscounting the years.
Also,
it's not an
possibility.
impossibility.
Yeah.
There's some likelihood there. I don't know how much.
This book says the oldest organism on Earth is 4,300 years old. Earth's oldest organism. Now, I had one person say, Hovind, that's a 1977 textbook, and they now found one that's 4,700 years old. Okay, that is possible, okay? Well, let me rephrase that. It's possible that they found one with 4,700 rings. That does not necessarily mean 4,700 years old.
Okay, first, I'm pretty sure they didn't actually find a single trunk with 47,000 years. Maybe they did.
Well, 100,
Yeah,
not 1,000.
Either
but,
way.
I mean, there's Prometheus, 4,900 plus, cut down in 1964. Methuselah, 4,854, still alive.
There you go.
And then I can't pronounce this one.
That's big grandfather in Spanish.
This dating this is a very large range, and I don't understand why. 3651 to 5484 years old. That's a pretty big gap, and like I said, I don't know why. But...
Well, so here's the thing, right? With all of these trees that have these really high ring counts, again, if anything, they're older than the number of rings, rather than younger, because they're going to have more years of skipped rings than they are years of multiple rings.
Kent doesn't understand tree rings.
Yeah. That reminds me. One time, one of my friends, like nagging me about, like, simple, basic stuff, like, hey, make sure you get enough sleep. And I was like, look, if you keep doing this, I'm just going to start calling you Abuela. Because, she was like, no, don't do that. And I was like, all right, well, you gotta stop bugging me about basic things. I don't know why I told that story, except that you said Grande Abuelo. Reminded me of that.
I was just reading.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, yeah, that's just a thing that happened.
Okay. If you look at the way these things grow, they're just really ugly. Okay.
Okay, sure.
And to count the rings would be a very difficult task. Because the
story did suck. I agree. It was not a good story.
Sometimes they grow.
There are some people who are faced with difficult tasks, and they work really hard, and then they accomplish those tasks. Difficult doesn't mean impossible, and it doesn't mean it wasn't finished or wasn't done.
One way and then grow. It's a tangled up, gnarled mess. It's just not a simple thing. Plus, you're talking rings where you get about 100 rings per inch.
Okay, hold on. Bent. Are there machines that can take very small things? Microscope? Is that what you call it when you take a really small thing and then you make it easy to see?
Yes, by amplifying the light. I don't know what that means.
You mean magnifying?
Or magnifying, yes, magnifying the light. I do know what that means.
But that's a real thing that exists, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those aren't make-believe?
No, they're not. Microscopes are real. They've been real a lot longer than Kent's been alive.
Okay.
A lot longer than I've been alive. A fraction of the time you've been alive. Being 150 million years.
Go count the one in there. You'll see it. Take a look at it for yourself during the break here in a couple minutes. You can see for yourself. This is really tough to count these things. But it's interesting. Why would the oldest living tree
be...
for
a long time to get really good at it, though.
He doesn't... I'm not even sure Kent knows that that's a thing you can do. I honestly think that Kent might think that the way that you become a dendrochronologist is you just pick up a magnifying glass and a piece of tree. I think that might be what he thinks training is like.
He has no idea how college works. Did I write that one down earlier?
Well,
like, he doesn't understand.
He went to a fake college.
He went to a house.
Well, so he did go there. So he did go to for his quote-unquote undergrad work. He went to a fake college, which was an unaccredited college, but it did have a campus and it did have some classes.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
I forgot about that.
But then he went to Patriot Bible University, which is just a trailer.
It used to be a house, and now it's a trailer or something like
that.
Somewhere around 4,300 years old. Well, you see, there was a creation
600,000 years ago.
4,400 years ago.
You guys know.
Now, the oldest tree in the world being 40...
Any tree over 4,400's got to be a Satan tree. It can't be real. But exactly 4,400 is what you would expect, because that would prove that the flood happened that year. That's exactly how his brain works.
300 years old doesn't prove the Bible's right, but it certainly is a good indication. It fits everything else.
Okay, look. Let's say, just for the sake of argument, that the oldest thing happens to be 4,400 years old. Doesn't indicate anything. That just means that that's how old those things get. And you happen to be living at a time when that's about how long ago you think the flood was. It literally doesn't mean anything, right? It's like saying, hey, the oldest human out there is like, and I don't know, I'm just picking a number, is like 117 years old. What happened 17 years ago that killed all the other humans, huh? Nothing. That's how old humans get, generally speaking. It's all that's happening right now.
It doesn't understand thinking, how thinking works.
Or age.
It doesn't hurt the creation theory.
I'll agree there. You know what? True. Take a drink.
It may hurt the evolution theory.
No, we'll take a drink for that, because that's unimaginably stupid.
Demonstrate how, please, with the following sentence. Please give an example.
They have an article here. I don't have the date on this. It's from the Washington Post, but if somebody can find the date, please let me know. People send me articles all the time. Oh, you got to see this article.
Is this article proving how it's a problem with evolution?
It might. We'll have to see.
Please?
I can document it.
That's what I want to see.
They didn't send where it came from, but I don't know where it came from. But the general Sherman tree, the tallest tree in the world,
no, but okay,
was thought to be 5,000 to 6,000 years old. When they tested it with tree...
Erefamian for $20 says, a real dendrochronologist could run rings around Kent's arguments. Very nice. I love it. Thank you very much, Erefamian.
That's amazing.
Erefamian, I always appreciate your super chat.
I love that.
That's great.
General Sherman is 2,300 to 2,700 years old.
Oh, so it's not 5,000 to 6,000 years.
I mean, it's possible that it was thought to be that old, and then they did tests in the ring and had fewer rings. I'm reading about it on Wikipedia. But yeah, that's it.
It only had 2,000 rings. So it's pretty tough to estimate.
Okay. It's tough to estimate, but easy to count is what I just got out of that. I don't know how that helps Kent at all.
I don't know if he's making a point. Well, let me rephrase. I don't know if he realizes he's not making a point.
I doubt it. I think he thinks he's making a point.
Or if he's going to say a couple more things after this audience question and then try to make a point, which is possible.
Robert Madewell says that General Sherman is the most voluminous tree in the world, not the tallest tree. Okay, I can see that.
that the most massive tree then?
No, it's the tree with the highest volume.
Well, I mean, I'm asking both. Could it be both? It could be both.
It could be both.
Is it also the most
Oh,
massive?
I see what you mean. Yeah, it could be. I don't know. That would be an interesting thing to know.
It is the largest known living single-stem tree on Earth.
I mean, that
by volume.
By volume, right. But by mass?
By volume. Well, someone knows. I don't know, and neither does Uncle Kent. No relation.
All right, here we go.
Can you get on the internet?
It's probably from 10 or 15 years ago. Yeah, we could probably make search it on the internet. Scientists trim 3,000 years off largest tree. Do they say here how tall it is at the time of this?
275 feet,
And 30 feet across? Okay.
33 feet across. Actually, Dr. Hogan, the tallest trees are the coastal redwoods north of.
Oh, someone's about to contradict Kent. I really want to see what happens because, from my understanding, from people who have known Kent, Kent is not a big fan of being corrected on anything. Also, Vandalia 1998, who's been a member for 24 months,
He's never wrong.
right about to get that Dapper Dino badge. Right now, Vandalia has the
So
Ceratosaurus
close.
skull, which is really cool, but it's not quite the Dapper Dino badge. It's getting there. 24 hours from... It says 24 hours from me now. From me, Ness and Walker will be... Oh, from now, yeah, sorry. 20 hours from now, or comma, yeah, there we go. Me, Ness, and Walker be talking about our non-amniotic tetrapod cousins on the podcast. If anyone is interested, happy month-anniversary. Month-anniversary. There we go. I can read. Thank you very much, Vandalia. I hope it goes well.
North of San Francisco?
The coastal.
Well, isn't the General Sherman? It's up there, isn't it?
The Sherman is the largest tree.
Okay, it's a sequoia. Yeah, it's not a redwood. Yeah,
The girth and the,
yeah. Sequoias are the largest. Redwoods are the tallest. Okay.
the largest.
Yeah, they have the most wood in them. There's enough wood in one of those big sequoias to probably build, what, 800 houses or something? It's phenomenal. It's
A lot
incredible.
of wood.
Yeah.
The bark on those things is 2 feet thick. You know, they have a forest fire come through there and doesn't even hurt them. You know,
That's a
has to
lot
really
of
be
wood.
tough to hurt one of those trees.
That's what she
'cause
said.
they're amazingly tough. The largest reef in the world, coral reef, is in Australia. The Great Barrier
New
Reef.
topic,
It's called
coral reef.
15
Got it.
Yep, just changing. Oh,
No
okay.
point was made.
Here's my prediction. Kent Hovind is going to say the Great Barrier Reef started growing, according to estimates, less time ago than the Earth is supposed to have been old. Therefore, the Earth must be young. It's just going to be another one of those. The coral reef here is younger than they say the planet is. Therefore, the planet's young, which is just, again, you guys apparently can prove the Earth is 5 minutes old by just pouring a bunch of water on the ground and saying, that channel didn't exist 5 minutes ago, so evolution disproved, I guess. All right, here we go.
100 miles long. I got a call just south of Brisbane in Beenleigh, and a friend of mine's been a missionary over there for years. He said, "Hey, Brother Hovind, would you like to come preach in Australia?"
I too have a friend.
No, you don't lie.
Okay, he probably. It's believable he could have a friend, I guess.
I said, "Well, I need to pray about this." He said, "Yes." That was a no-brainer. So my whole family got to go with me. My kids were probably
Around 16, 17, 18.
16, 17, 18, somewhere around there. We all went over to Australia. My daughter and I actually got to go scuba diving at the Great Barrier Reef. It was incredible. You know, the reef is unbelievable. They say it's the best in the world.
Is that the daughter during whose wedding you took a phone call, Kent? Just wondering. And by during whose wedding, I mean while you were officiating.
Well, he was officiating
Right.
during the officiating portion of it.
Just wondering.
That's the first place I went scuba diving, so I assume it's all like that, you know. I've since been to Cozumel, Mexico, which is awful good, and to Hawaii. Now, it's rough, you know, but somebody has to do it over there, so might as well, you know. I've taken the beginner class 3 times, okay? I've
been to
never gotten
Hawaii.
PADI certified.
I want to go back to Hawaii. I love it there.
Hawaii is really nice. The thing about Hawaii, though, is that I dropped like $6,000 in like early 2000s money, and what I came away with was a pair of flip-flops.
And memories.
You get lots of
Life
memories.
experience.
Also, I did buy a Red Bull Cola while I was there. That was horrible. That was the
I
worst.
did not spend nearly that much money in Hawaii.
And I spent so much on like food, drinks, and places to stay. I was just dropping cash.
I don't remember how much I spent, but I don't think it was that much. I know it wasn't that much.
Certified or anything. I always have to go through the class, you know, and here's how you do everything. But the Great Barrier Reef was studied pretty intently after World War II. Some of the reef was destroyed by ships and bombs and stuff, and they didn't have time to mess. They got a war to fight. Okay, let's not worry about the environment. We need to have a channel through here. Let's blast a channel through. So they put dynamite and everything, and they blew up sections of the reef to get it. They can get their ships in and out. Then after the war, okay, now let's see how fast.
Smitty says, were you buying groceries or going out to eat? Oh, I was going out to eat every single meal at nice places. Like, don't get me wrong, I was living it up, right? Like, I was just in from a deployment. I hadn't been spending any money for like 6 months, and I was getting like the hazard pay for a deployment and whatnot. And like I don't even think I've been paying rent because I'm pretty sure I just let my my previous lease run out, and I was just going to get a new place when I got back. So I mean, my expenses were basically zero.
The meager pay we got, like a 8-month deployment, you'll have a lot of money.
Yeah.
I mean, you're working so many hours, and your money is slowly accumulating, and you're not spending any of it.
Yeah, it turns out when your average monthly expenditures are like $20, you can be paid very little and still have a few grand to just drop on fancy places to stay and fancy food in Hawaii.
Yeah, the meal I remember from Hawaii involved midnight in my hotel room with the door open, the warm air in, and I was eating Lunchables and drinking Bud Light.
Oh, I spent a lot
back when I
on
drank alcohol, and that was like the cheapest meal I had. But I just remember because I turned the TV on and Rugrats was on, and I was like, all right, I can get out of being in the Navy mode right now and pretend I'm a kid.
I was doing
somehow
stuff
eating
like
Lunchables and drinking Bud Light. That doesn't make sense.
I was doing stuff like getting coconut shrimp with
It was
like
nice,
fresh caught
refreshing.
tropical fish while sipping on like expensive rum.
It's the air. The air is ocean air. It's so clean and fresh. It's amazing.
All right, here we go.
They watched the reef grow for about 20 years. Kept studying how fast it grows. They found some very interesting things about the reef. The deeper it is below the surface of the water, the slower it grows.
That more or less makes sense. A lot of corals actually has a symbiotic relationship with various algae. The algae photosynthesizes to provide coral with sugar, and the coral provides some protection to algae because coral, being a cnidarian, has cnidocytes, which can sting things that are trying to eat it. So there is actually a pretty strong correlation between sunlight levels and coral growth. So we'll take a drink for Kent being more, he's getting there.
Because the coral down there can't quite get enough sunlight. As it gets closer to the surface...
I think Kent knows that coral is an animal and not a plant.
I don't think he knows anything about what coral is. I think he has no idea.
It grows faster.
No, I don't.
Plus, during flood season on land, the reef grows faster.
I would want a citation for that, but I'm not going to say it's definitely wrong.
Because more stuff's being washed out. More minerals are in the water, which means more critters can eat the minerals, which means the coral can eat more critters.
Okay, so like I said, I don't know if that's correct, but it doesn't sound obviously wrong because while some coral does in fact have a symbiotic relationship with algae, not all of them do, and all of them do in fact eat animals. Because again, they're cnidarians, just like jellyfish. They sting things and grab them, and that's a thing.
So during flood season or rainy season, you have a different growth rate than you do during
dry season.
There are quite a few factors that influence reef growth. Okay,
Yeah, and then Spinny says, sounds like Kent does know that coral isn't it. Yeah, because he does say that it's other animals. Fair enough.
How fast it grows. But based on a 20-year average, trying to take everything into consideration, they said the oldest reef in the world is less than 4,200 years old.
Let's just Google real quick. How old is the barrier reef? I just want to see what comes up, because I don't know. How old is the Great Barrier Reef? How old is the Great? 6,000 to 8,000 years old. So, not 4,200 years old is the current best estimate.
480 million years ago. I'm going to have to read this because I don't know what I'm reading here.
Some studies said like 3,800 years old.
And apparently, the modern studies say 6,000 to 8,000 years old, which is a whole lot older than Kent would allow for with the flood.
Okay. Somewhere around 4,000 years.
No. I'm just going to take a drink for Kent is misreporting.
Okay, there's an article in Creation Ex Nihilo magazine, had one, the older version. They're in the library if you guys want to check that out. Creation, they changed the name. It used to be Creation Ex Nihilo, which means creation out of nothing. They changed it now. They just call it Creation Magazine. Okay.
Yeah, probably because people don't like.
There's also one called Creation Illustrated, which is good. We encourage people to get either one of them, but they're unrelated to each other. This.
All right, guys, look. Ken is rambling too much. I'm going to stop it here. We're going to start wrapping it up. Bent, got anything you want to plug? Anything coming up?
Is there anything coming up?
I don't know.
I think in after. So I know you're doing a Power Rangers game.
Not this.
And I know there's.
That's not this week. That's.
Well, I know there's one that is that you are running.
Yes.
And at some point, I will be joining in as the Green Ranger, but I don't know when that's going to be because I don't know if it's on a hiatus right now. Or...
It is on. Well, it's on a sort of mini hiatus.
Yeah, like a mini hiatus. So there's going to be probably a couple more episodes before I would come into it, and then I would be a part of it after that. I don't know, 2 or 3 more. I'm not really sure. It depends.
Yeah,
on
that's about right. 2 or 3.
The timing of the story and everything. So, yeah.
Okay. So also our D&D game is also on hiatus. So basically, both of these are on hiatus because they both depend on Maddie. And I can say this publicly now. Maddie has had her baby. They are both doing well. Last I heard, Maddie should be back home with her baby by now. And so we're giving her some, obviously some time and space to recover and be with her new baby. But in the next...
Congratulations, Maddie.
Absolutely. However, she has said that in the next, month or a few weeks or something like that, she wants to get back into doing things like D&D and the Power Rangers game and coming on for Maddie and stuff like that. So, hopefully that will be starting back up soon. Congratulations to Maddie. I'm very happy for you if you're watching this. It's great. I'm glad that everything went well and that you had a nice, healthy baby girl and that you are presumably now home with her. So yeah, let's see. Let's take a look at other things. So on the 1st, we have the final episode of the Stephen Meyer series coming out. I don't know what's happening on the 3rd. It'll probably be another Dapper Reacts. I'll ask Vishanti if she wants to come on. She doesn't have to. She actually might not because I think Dragon Con is going on that weekend. I think she's going to be doing convention stuff. Let's see. Tuesday should be another Kent with Bent 91. And then the Thursday after that, I think, but don't quote me, we're going to be starting the 2-parter on spirit science and what frequency is your consciousness.
I have a question about that Thursday. Is that the Thursday that the last Thursdaysm is really going to be referring to?
Oh, it's all Thursdays.
Yeah, but okay.
The universe is always destroyed.
I got it. No, I got it. Oh, I got it. See, I was thinking about time the way Kent does for a while, and then I just stopped.
Right.
And then it made sense to me.
Okay. What Patreon tier do we need to be to name Maddie's baby, says Tapioca Weasel. You'd have to ask Maddie about that. Although I have it on good authority, Maddie, that the baby already has a name, so that shit may have already sailed. So guys, thank you very much. I really appreciate all you being here once again. Oh, DM Wing sends a last-minute super chat for $10 with money sign, Dapper emoji, money sign. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Guys, if you are a patron or a member, please, if you want to, head over to the Discord server in the voice. I'm going to make myself, I think, a quick bite to eat. Like, I think I'm just going to fry up some rice and an egg or something. And, Yeah, and then I'll be in there, and I think we're going to watch Mighty Morphin
I'll be
Power
there.
Rangers, because it's been a
I'll be
while.
there too.
Yeah, so Bent will
It'll
be
be
there.
a big party.
But with that, guys, I hope to see you all on Thursday, and we're out of here. Thanks for watching, but before you go, I just want to say a special thank you to my channel members and my patrons, especially those pledging $20 or above. Bob Knob, Work in Progress, Bent Hovend, Cynically Skeptic, Denny5252, Ian Chen, John Ackerman, Landon Knoll, Mabdy Babbity, McSpooks, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Bede, and Patrick Dennis. As you probably know, YouTube is a very volatile platform, and from month to month my income on the channel can swing wildly. But the people you see on screen are directly supporting so that I don't have to worry too much about that, and the channel can keep going as it is, and perhaps even improving. If you'd like to join this team, there are links below to join the channel or in the description to join the Patreon. The Patreon starts as low as $1 a month, and the channel memberships start as low as $1.99 a month. On Patreon, you can even get a discount for pledging annually. If you do decide to pledge, you'll get access to an exclusive Discord server just for channel supporters, as well as early access to all of my pre-recorded videos, often up to 2 months in advance. Higher tiers will unlock even better perks. Now, if an annual or monthly pledge isn't right for you, but you still want to support the channel, there is a merch store down in the description, as well as an Amazon wishlist, just for me. And if financial support isn't something you can or want to do, then if you still want to help out the channel, please just like and share these videos and make sure you comment on them. It really helps the channel out. Thanks again for watching.